It was her words that cut through me first. Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now. I remember them as if they were etched into my mind. I stood there, my hands trembling, packing my bags like a shadow of the woman I used to be. 3 days later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, staring at a will that told me everything I thought I knew was a lie. The man I had loved for over 4 decades had played me, and I didn't even know the game had started. I was Emily Roberts, a wife and mother for 43 years, and in a few moments, I had become someone I hardly recognized. The woman who had always kept everything together was now facing the cold reality of betrayal. When John passed away suddenly from a heart attack at 71, I thought it was the end of me. Grief took over in waves, and it felt like I was drowning. But as the days turned to weeks, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just the loss of my husband. It was the loss of everything I thought was safe. Olivia, my daughter, swooped in under the guise of care, saying all the right things. "Mom, you can't manage this house on your own. It's too much for you." Her voice dripped with sympathy, but I couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling deep inside. Olivia had always been John's favorite. The one who could do no wrong, the one he had spoiled. When she married Greg, an investment banker, and they started their family, I faded into the background. I was just the woman who cooked and cleaned, who kept the house running. I was a fixture. But Olivia's concern began to feel more like a strategy. She would show up with Greg, and the 3 of us would sit at the dinner table while they subtly pushed retirement home brochures my way. "You'd be so much happier in a place like this, Mom," she'd say with that fake smile. No responsibilities, new friends, activities. What she really meant, though, was simple. No inheritance to share, no inconvenient mother left to deal with. Then came that fateful Tuesday, 6 weeks after John's death. Olivia arrived at the house unannounced, Greg in tow, carrying 2 large suitcases. She didn't waste any time. "Mom," she said, as if she were delivering good news, "we've made a decision. Greg got a promotion and we need to move into the city. This house would be perfect for us." I stared at her, unable to process the words. "Move in." But this is my home. And that's when I saw it. The coldness in her eyes, a flicker of something I hadn't seen before. She didn't even blink. "Actually, Mom, according to Dad's will, I inherited everything. The house, the investments, all of it. I've been letting you stay here out of kindness, but it's time for you to find your own place." The words hit me like a slap. No, there must be a mistake. This isn't what he wanted. Olivia's smile remained. False, calculating. No mistake. Dad knew I'd take better care of his legacy than you ever could. And then came the final blow. Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now. The next few days felt like a blur. Olivia's words echoed in my head, each one more haunting than the last. You're useless now. I had spent 43 years of my life as John's wife, his partner, and the mother of his children. I had worked, sacrificed, and loved with everything I had. And yet, in the end, I was just a burden to be discarded. It stung more than I cared to admit. I didn't know where to go. I was in shock. The home I had nurtured, the home I had built with my hands and heart, was no longer mine. The walls that had once held memories of our life together, birthday parties, anniversaries, quiet evenings by the fireplace, now felt like a stranger's house. Greg had already taken my things, my life, into his pristine BMW, with that quiet efficiency that made me feel like a piece of luggage. No more worries about house repairs or taxes, he had said. I was free now, free to live independently. But what they didn't realize was that I wasn't living. I was surviving. And it didn't take long for me to understand that their kindness was nothing but a hollow excuse to get rid of me. They wanted me gone, out of their way, and out of the inheritance that I had helped create. I ended up in a cheap motel, the kind of place you only stay in when there's nowhere else to turn. The bed sagged in the middle, the walls were paper-thin, and the air smelled stale. Victoria had handed me a few $100s like it was a tip. "This should be enough to get you started," she had said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The irony wasn't lost on me. My daughter, who was inheriting millions, giving me enough money for a few nights in a rundown motel. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the small box of photos I had packed. The memories of a lifetime in a few pictures. The life I had known for so long seemed so distant now. My heart felt heavy with the realization that the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved, wasn't who she seemed. Olivia had never been the daughter I had believed her to be. She was a stranger in my own family. But something inside me sparked. John had always been meticulous about everything. His business, his finances, he kept track of it all. He wouldn't have left me like this. I had to find out the truth. I couldn't just sit back and let Olivia and Greg take everything. I had to make sure I wasn't being played for a fool. That night, I pulled out my phone and searched for John's lawyer, Peter Miller. He had handled everything for us, the house, the investments, the will. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. The thought of confronting Peter made my stomach turn, but I had no choice. I wasn't going to let Olivia steal my future without a fight. The next morning I was on a bus, heading downtown to Peter's office. It felt like a lifetime ago that I had stepped foot into that office, when John was still alive and everything seemed so secure. Now, the familiar walk down those cold marble halls felt like I was walking into a foreign world. Peter was in his 70s, his once sharp eyes now softened by time. When his secretary announced my arrival, he looked genuinely surprised. "Emily, my dear, I was wondering when you'd come in," he said warmly. But something in his eyes told me he knew this visit wasn't a social call. "I tried calling your house several times," he continued. "Olivia said you were traveling." Traveling? What did Olivia tell him? My chest tightened as I sat down across from Peter, my heart pounding. "Peter, I need to ask you about John's will." His face twisted in confusion. "Of course. Didn't Olivia provide you with your copy?" I gave her the original and several copies after the reading. The blood drained from my face. "A reading?" I whispered. The room seemed to tilt around me. "I never knew there was a reading." Peter's face grew serious, his voice dropping. "Margaret, you were supposed to be there. Olivia said you were too distraught, that she'd handle everything for you, make sure you got your inheritance." The room started spinning. My thoughts raced as the realization hit me. Peter continued, but his words didn't fully register. "No. Olivia told me she inherited everything," I said, barely able to speak. Peter looked at me, his eyes wide with alarm. "Emily, that's impossible. John's will was very specific. He left you everything. The house, 70% of all the financial assets. Approximately $23 million. I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. $23 million. The house. Everything John and I had built. My life, my sacrifices, my love for him. Reduced to a number on a piece of paper. And all the while, Olivia had been lying to me. She had orchestrated everything. Manipulated me into thinking I had no place in our family. The rage bubbling inside me felt like it was going to consume me whole. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was sit there, frozen. Peter looked at me, his face filled with genuine concern. "Emily, there's been a massive betrayal here. Olivia has committed fraud and elder abuse. She's lied about everything." I barely heard him. The words hit me like a freight train. How could my daughter, my only daughter, do this to me? To us. To the family we had once been. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I don't understand," I said, my voice trembling. "How could she do this? How could she lie to me like this?" Peter leaned in, his expression turning serious. "Olivia is not the person you think she is. And I'm afraid this is only the beginning. She's not just trying to take your inheritance. This is about control, manipulation, and a complete disregard for what's right." My mind raced as I processed the words. I had trusted Olivia, loved her with everything I had, and she had thrown that love back in my face. I had spent my whole life supporting her, raising her, trying to give her the best of everything. And this is what I got in return. A lifetime of love and sacrifice erased in one cold, calculated act. Peter's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. We need to act quickly, Emily. Olivia has already made moves. She's forging documents, hiding assets. But we can stop her. If we move fast enough, we can turn this around. But you have to be ready. You have to be prepared for the battle ahead. I felt a surge of something deep inside me. It wasn't just anger anymore, it was clarity. I wasn't going to let Olivia walk all over me. I wasn't going to be discarded, thrown away like I was nothing. I had a fight left in me, and I was going to use every bit of it to take back what was mine. As Peter made calls, putting everything into motion, I sat in his office, feeling like a different person. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't the woman who had been tossed aside. I was the woman who was going to make Olivia face the consequences of her actions. It was time to make my move. But as I made my plans, a sickening thought crept into my mind. Olivia wasn't working alone. She had an ally, someone behind the scenes pulling the strings. And I wasn't sure who it was yet. As I sat in Peter's office, feeling the weight of the betrayal in my chest, my phone buzzed. It was Olivia. I stared at the screen, heart racing. She wasn't calling to apologize. No, that wasn't Olivia's style. She was calling because she thought she could still manipulate me, still control the narrative. I answered, my voice steady but cold. Olivia. Mom, she said, her tone sweet as honey. There's been a mix-up with the bank accounts. Something's not right, and I need to talk to you. I could hear the urgency in her voice, but there was no warmth, no remorse. I knew exactly what this was. Olivia trying to cover her tracks, trying to make me doubt everything I had learned. But this time I wasn't going to fall for it. Not again. Olivia, I said, cutting her off before she could weave her lies. I'm sitting in Peter's office right now. I've learned everything. The truth is out. And you've just cost yourself everything. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her scrambling, trying to put the pieces together. What do you mean? What do you know? She asked, her voice tight now, the facade cracking. You know exactly what I mean, I said, my voice hardening. You lied. You manipulated. You thought you could take everything from me, but you're about to learn how wrong you were. Silence. I could practically hear the gears turning in her mind, trying to come up with a new story, a new lie. Finally she spoke again, her voice soft and desperate. Mom, please, we need to meet. We need to fix this. I felt a cold smile tug at my lips. Fix this. Olivia, there's nothing to fix. You've already shown me who you are. Now it's time for you to face the consequences. And with that I ended the call. I didn't need to hear her excuses anymore. The truth was clear. Olivia had gone too far. And now there would be no going back. But as I hung up the phone, another thought gnawed at me. Olivia wasn't the only one who had a hand in this. There was someone else pulling the strings, someone more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Olivia was bad enough, but I couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion that there was more to this than just her. She wasn't working alone. Someone had been guiding her. Someone who knew exactly how to push my buttons, how to play me like a pawn in a game I didn't even know I was part of. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floor, every flicker of the streetlight outside, felt like a warning. I kept thinking about the way Olivia had acted during all those family dinners, always controlling the conversation, always dismissing my opinions like they didn't matter. And now, everything I had trusted, everything I had built, was crumbling beneath my feet. But it wasn't just Olivia's betrayal, it was the bigger picture. The world I thought I knew was nothing more than an illusion. The next day I went straight to Peter's office. He was expecting me, and when I walked in I could tell something had changed. There was an urgency in the air, a tension I hadn't felt before. Emily, he said, his voice low, I've been doing some digging. Olivia's actions, as bad as they are just the tip of the iceberg. There's someone else involved. Someone you don't want to mess with. My blood ran cold. Who? Who's behind this? I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Peter looked over his shoulder, making sure no one was listening. "Greg," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Olivia's husband. He's not just some banker. He's been involved in some very questionable activities, and he's been using Olivia to cover his tracks." I felt a knot form in my stomach. Greg. I had always thought of him as the golden son-in-law, the man who had it all together. But I should have known better. The way he'd always acted, so polite, so charming, it was all a mask. And now I was learning that mask hid something far more dangerous. Peter continued. "Greg's connections go deep. This isn't just a family squabble. This is bigger than that. He's been laundering money, hiding assets, using Olivia as his pawn to secure what he wants." The revelation hit me like a slap. My daughter's husband, the man I had trusted to be a part of our family, was a criminal. And he had been using Olivia as his shield all along. Felt sick. Betrayed by the two people who should have been closest to me. "Emily," Peter said, snapping me out of my daze. "You need to be prepared. This isn't going to be easy. Greg's not going to back down. He's going to fight you every step of the way." But I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't the woman who had let people walk all over her. I was the woman who was going to take back what was mine, no matter who I had to face. But as I left Peter's office, a new realization hit me. If Greg was involved in all this, there was no telling what lengths he would go to in order to cover his tracks. And that made me wonder, what was he really after? What had he planned for me, and how far was he willing to go to get it? I couldn't stop thinking about what Peter had said. Greg wasn't just Olivia's husband. He was the mastermind behind everything. The moment those words sank in, my whole world shifted. I had spent years thinking of him as just a quiet, polite man. But now I realized he had been playing a dangerous game, and I was just another pawn. As I drove home that evening, my mind raced. What had he been planning all along? Was Olivia just a pawn in his game too? Or had she been in on it from the start? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I had trusted them both. I had welcomed Greg into my home, treated him like family, and this was how they repaid me, by turning my life upside down. That night I couldn't sleep. The weight of everything pressed down on me. I wasn't just fighting for money or property anymore. I was fighting for my dignity, my place in the world. And I wasn't going to let Greg and Olivia take that from me. I spent the next few days making calls, tracking down information, trying to piece together the puzzle. I knew I had to move fast. If I waited too long, Greg and Olivia would close ranks, and I'd be left in the dust. But with every new piece of information I uncovered, I felt like I was getting closer to the truth. Then came the phone call that would change everything. It was Peter, and his voice sounded more urgent than ever. "Emily, I've found something. It's worse than we thought. Greg's connections run deep. He's tied to a network of people who are involved in some very dangerous things. And now, he's using Olivia to cover it up." I gripped the phone, my heart pounding. "What do you mean, dangerous things?" I asked, my voice trembling. Peter paused before answering. "Money laundering, embezzlement. And worse. Greg's been working with some criminal organizations to hide his tracks. He's been using Olivia as a shield, keeping her in the dark while he built an empire of lies. But now it's all coming to light, and he's not going to let you stand in his way." I sat there stunned. The man I had trusted, Olivia's husband, was involved in something much bigger than I had ever imagined. This wasn't just a family betrayal. This was a full-blown criminal conspiracy. And now I was caught in the middle of it. Peter's voice broke through my thoughts. "We need to act fast, Emily. Greg won't stop. He'll do whatever it takes to keep his secret safe. And you need to be ready for whatever comes next." I hung up the phone, my mind reeling. I couldn't let Greg win. I couldn't let him take everything from me, from my family. I had to find a way to fight back, no matter what it took. But as I sat there, thinking about the fight ahead, another realization dawned on me. Greg wasn't just fighting for money. He was fighting for control. And if I wasn't careful, I would lose everything. not just my inheritance but my identity, my place in the world. The stakes had just gotten a lot higher. I had always trusted John. I had believed that no matter what happened, we would always have each other's backs. But now, as the pieces of this horrifying puzzle came together, I realized how little I truly knew. Greg, Olivia's husband, was part of a world I never imagined he was connected to. Money laundering. Criminal organizations. I wasn't just facing a betrayal of trust. I was facing a betrayal of the deepest kind. The more Peter dug, the worse it got. Greg wasn't just hiding behind Olivia's back. He was using her to shield himself from a network of dangerous people. And now I was in the crosshairs. If I kept pushing, if I kept digging, I risked everything. My life, my safety, my future. But I wasn't about to back down. Not now. I spent the following days trying to understand the full scope of what Greg had done. Peter had warned me that this wasn't going to be easy, but I was done being afraid. I was done being the quiet woman who stood by and let others control my life. This time I was going to take charge. But as I delved deeper, something kept gnawing at me. Why hadn't Olivia seen through all this? She had to know, didn't she? I thought about the way she'd manipulated me, the way she'd dismissed every concern I had. She was part of it. Whether she knew the full extent or not, she was involved. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more. More than Greg, more than Olivia. I had to confront Olivia. I had to get the truth from her, even if it meant tearing apart whatever was left of our relationship. And so I called her. Her voice on the other end of the line sounded guarded, like she already knew what was coming. "Mom," she said, sounding like she was already bracing for a fight. "What's this about?" "Olivia, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. "I know what's been going on. And I need you to tell me the truth." There was a long silence on the other end. I could feel her hesitating, like she was trying to decide whether to lie or to come clean. Finally she spoke, her voice low. "Mom, you don't understand. I was just trying to protect you. I didn't know it would go this far." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Protect me. Protect me from what, Olivia? From Greg? From the mess you've made of everything?" Her voice cracked, but she didn't back down. "I didn't want you to get hurt. I thought if I just went along with it, if I did what Greg said, everything would work out." The lie was so obvious that I almost laughed. "Olivia, you let this happen. You helped make it happen. You and Greg thought you could take everything from me and get away with it, but I'm not going to let you." I could hear the desperation in her voice as she tried to explain. "Mom, please, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't know what Greg was really involved in. I just wanted us to be okay. I wanted to make things easier for all of us." But I was done listening to her excuses. "You made everything harder, Olivia. You made it impossible for me to trust you. You turned my life upside down. And now I'm going to make sure you face the consequences." I hung up the phone, feeling a mixture of relief and rage. Olivia wasn't going to get away with it. She couldn't. But as I sat there, stewing in my anger, a new thought struck me. If Olivia had been this involved, if she'd been lying to me for so long, then what else had she been hiding? And was I truly ready to face the full extent of her betrayal? The silence in the room felt suffocating. Olivia's words kept replaying in my mind. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But it didn't matter what she meant. What mattered was what she had done. The lies, the deceit, the betrayal. I had trusted my daughter, and she had stabbed me in the back. I couldn't just sit around, wondering if I was going to be swept up in Olivia and Greg's mess. I had to act. I had to make sure they understood that there were consequences for their actions. They couldn't just take what was mine, take my dignity, my home, my life, and walk away without facing the fallout. But as I began to prepare for what was ahead, a new thought kept nagging at me. How deep did this go? Greg wasn't just a bystander in all of this. He wasn't just some man trying to get his hands on my inheritance. No, there was something darker at play here. Something I still didn't fully understand. As I sat at home, sorting through papers and documents that had once been my husband's, things I thought I knew inside and out, I came across something strange. A folder that wasn't mine. A document I had never seen before. It was a contract, filled with numbers, names, and details I didn't recognize. My heart skipped a beat as I realized that this wasn't just about the inheritance. It was about something much bigger. Something John had hidden from me. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. So I did what I thought was the only thing left to do. I called Peter. When I met with him later that day, I barely said hello before I handed him the folder. He looked at it, his face unreadable. "Where did you find this?" he asked, his voice low, careful. "It doesn't matter where I found it," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "What matters is what it means. Greg and Olivia are involved in something that goes far beyond a simple inheritance dispute. I need you to tell me everything you know about this." Peter's eyes flicked to the folder, then back to me. He didn't speak for a moment. Finally, he set the folder down slowly, his gaze hardening. "Emily," he said, his voice grave, "this isn't just about money. What you're holding in your hands is a contract tied to illegal activity. This is a cover-up, a massive one, and I have no idea how far it goes. But you're right. Greg is involved in something much bigger than we originally thought." I could feel my world tilting again, like the rug had been pulled out from under me. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice tight with fear and disbelief. Peter leaned in, his face serious. "I'm saying that this isn't just about Olivia and Greg trying to steal your inheritance. This is about something criminal, something involving illegal money transfers and—" He paused, his eyes flicking nervously to the door. "I need you to be careful, Emily. This is bigger than you. And now you're involved." The weight of his words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I wasn't just fighting for my home, my inheritance. I was fighting against forces I couldn't even begin to understand. But even as fear settled in, a new sense of determination took root. If I was going to fight this battle, if I was going to take back what was mine, I had to play the game differently. And I needed to be ready for whatever came next, no matter how dangerous it might be. It felt like everything was falling into place, but at the same time, it felt like the storm was still brewing. As I left Peter's office, the weight of his words pressed down on me. "You're involved." The thought kept echoing in my mind. I wasn't just an innocent victim anymore. I was a player in a game I hadn't even known existed, surrounded by lies, deceit, and criminal activity. I had never imagined my life would turn into this. But now I had no choice but to face it head-on. Greg and Olivia had forced my hand. I had to fight for everything that was mine, not just the house and the money, but my place in this world. I spent the next few days gathering every scrap of information I could find. Documents, files, anything that could give me the upper hand. I couldn't trust anyone now, not even Olivia. She had become a stranger to me, and the more I thought about her actions, the more disgusted I became. She wasn't the daughter I had raised. She was someone else, someone who had been corrupted by greed, by her ambition. But despite everything, I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. She was still my daughter. And somewhere deep down, I wished she could see the truth, could see how far she had fallen. But that wasn't my responsibility anymore. She had made her choices. Now it was time for her to face the consequences. Peter had told me that Greg's involvement ran deeper than we could have ever imagined, but I had no idea just how far it went until I stumbled across something that chilled me to my core. It was a name I hadn't expected to see. I was going through some old business records of John's, trying to make sense of the hidden contracts Peter had mentioned. That's when I saw it, the Torino crime family. The name was a ghost from a past I never knew existed. John had been connected to them for 12 years. How had I never known? I stared at the file, my heart racing. I couldn't believe it. But there it was in black and white. My husband, the man I had loved for so long, had been involved with one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country. And now, somehow, I was tied to it. I had no idea what this meant for me. But I couldn't back down now. I had already come this far, and I wasn't about to stop. But as I closed the file, a terrifying thought crossed my mind. If Greg and Olivia had known about this, if they had been involved in these criminal dealings, there was no telling how far they would go to keep it all hidden. And I realized for the first time that this wasn't just about inheritance anymore, it was about survival. As I sat in my living room, looking around at the life I had rebuilt, I couldn't help but think about how far I had come. The woman who had once been afraid, who had allowed others to take control, was now standing tall, stronger, wiser, more determined than ever to make sure no one would ever take from me again. I thought about the storm that had come through my life, how it had torn everything apart. Olivia, Greg, the betrayal. But somehow, in the aftermath of it all, I found something inside of me that I never knew existed. A fire that couldn't be extinguished. A strength that no one could take away. I had stood up for myself, I had fought for my rights, and now I was taking back control. Not just of my inheritance but of my life. The truth had set me free. It had given me the power to face the hardest things, to stand tall in the face of everything I had lost. It was no longer just about fighting Olivia and Greg. It was about reclaiming my own narrative, my own future. The FBI had moved in on them, and the legal battle had begun. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be fast. But I knew deep down that this was the beginning of something new. Something better. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need anyone's validation. I had fought for my dignity, my home, and my peace of mind. And now I was taking my life into my own hands. My house, was more than just a building. It was a symbol of everything I had fought for. My strength, my resilience, my journey from grief to empowerment. I had turned this space into my sanctuary. The walls that had once held so many memories of John, of our life together, now held the story of my transformation. And as I looked out at the garden, I saw it. My garden. The one I had planted with my own hands. The one that was blooming just like I was. It was my proof that I could still grow, still thrive, no matter what had happened before. I wasn't a victim of my circumstances anymore. I was the architect of my own future. But as I stood there, watching the sunset over the garden, I knew the journey wasn't over. There would always be challenges, always be people who would try to tear me down. But I had learned one of life's greatest truths. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming everything your enemies never thought you could be. Thanks for listening. If you've ever faced a struggle like this, share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters, and together we can lift each other up. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of strength, survival, and empowerment. You never know. Your journey might inspire someone else to rise from the ashes, just like I did.